Let's break it down straight from the hill to your hometown. No spin, no hype, just facts we find. AI's on the case, no truth left behind. Laws are written, deals are made. Who's got your back, who's throwing shade? We cut through the noise, decode the text, keeping it real. Congress in context, Congress in context, shining the light, breaking it down so you know what's right. Policies, votes, who's working for you? We bring the facts, the power is you.
Welcome to Congress in Context, everyone.
Yay.
Imagine like you have a direct line into the heart of Congress.
Yeah.
Understanding the forces shaping, policies that impact your life.
Right.
Well, that's what we're doing today. We are diving into the Congressional Record from March 6, 2025. Think of it as like a daily diary of democracy, capturing everything said on the House and Senate floors.
Yeah.
We will unpack the hot topics,
Yes.
the debates, and maybe even uncover a few surprises.
For sure.
So, it's a fascinating lens into the minds of our elected officials.
It is.
And, the complexities of governing a nation as diverse as ours.
Absolutely.
Today we'll focus on three key areas. A controversial bill that ignited some serious debate, the surprising censure of a congressman, and one representative's anxieties about the national debt.
Yeah. And these snapshots, I think, offer a glimpse into some broader legislative trends and, the forces shaping our nation's future.
Absolutely. Okay, let's start with S.J. Res. 11. This is a resolution aimed at overturning a Bureau of Ocean Energy Management rule. Essentially, this rule required companies to conduct surveys for marine archaeological resources before they could begin offshore energy exploration. Sounds pretty straightforward, right?
Well, not so fast. This seemingly, technical rule sparked a very fiery debate, highlighting this tension between economic interests and environmental concerns that often plays out in energy policy.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack these arguments. Congressman Westerman was a vocal advocate for overturning the rule. His central argument was that the rule is redundant, claiming existing laws already protect these archaeological resources.
Right, and he also argued that it added another layer of, bureaucracy,
Right.
increasing the costs for energy production.
Yeah.
And ultimately, he said, harming consumers.
Yeah.
And to make his point, he used a really memorable analogy. He said that requiring these surveys was like, quote, wearing a suspender with a belt. Totally unnecessary.
Yeah, that's a pretty vivid image.
Yeah.
Do you think that kind of simple, relatable language is effective in swaying opinions on complex policy issues?
I think it can be. It taps into this kind of common frustration with perceived government overreach.
Right.
Right. And it resonates with the idea that businesses are being burdened with unnecessary red tape.
Yeah.
And so it can be, I think, a very powerful way to kind of frame the debate.
Congressman Westerman also placed this rule within a larger narrative, suggesting it was part of a broader pattern of Biden-era restrictions on energy development.
Right. And that's a tactic, often employed to galvanize support.
Yeah.
Positioning the specific policy within a broader ideological framework.
Right.
And in this case, it appeals to those who see environmental regulations as kind of these obstacles to economic growth and energy independence.
Right. But as with most things in Congress, there was another side to this story.
Right. So Congressman Huffman presented, I think, a really compelling counterargument, emphasizing the importance of the rule in ensuring that surveys meet rigorous scientific standards.
Yeah.
He argued that this protects not only tribal resources, but also the safety of workers involved in these offshore operations.
He offered some very specific examples, too. For instance, he pointed out that the rule could help protect workers from encountering hazards like unexploded military ammunition or radioactive waste during drilling.
Right.
That definitely makes the stakes feel more real.
Absolutely. I think grounding these abstract policy debates in kind of real-world consequences makes them much more impactful. And Congressman Huffman used that strategy effectively to counter the narrative that this rule was merely an unnecessary burden.
Yeah. So it wasn't just about, archaeological artifacts.
Right.
It was about human lives and livelihoods.
Yeah.
Congressman Huffman also argued that overturning this rule would ultimately benefit big oil at the expense of the environment and everyday Americans.
Yeah, this is a recurring theme in these kinds of debates.
Right.
This idea that powerful corporate interests are seeking to roll back regulations that protect the public and the environment. It's a potent argument, I think, that resonates with those concerned about corporate influence on government policy.
Well, when it came down to a vote, the resolution to overturn the rule passed the House with a vote of 221 to 202.
Yeah.
So it seems like a victory for those who prioritize streamlined energy production, but potentially a setback for those who emphasize environmental protection and worker safety.
Right, and I think this outcome, reveals a lot about the current political climate.
Right.
And the balance of power in Congress.
Yeah.
And, it's likely a sign of things to come as, debates over energy policy and environmental regulations continue.
So if you're wondering what this all means for you, well, it depends on where you stand on this complex issue.
Yeah.
Do you see this as a step towards energy independence and economic growth, or a move away from, responsible stewardship of our resources? This is a question you'll have to ponder, as we continue to see this struggle between environmental protection and economic growth play out.
And keep in mind, this is just one piece of a much larger puzzle, right? Understanding these individual legislative battles kind of helps us grasp the bigger picture of how policy is made and how those decisions impact our lives.
Now let's move from energy battles to a different kind of political showdown, the censure of a congressman. Before we get into the specifics, can you explain what exactly a censure is for those who might not be familiar with the term?
Yeah, a censure is basically a formal reprimand issued by Congress to one of its own members.
Right.
It expresses strong disapproval of a member's conduct, and it can have serious reputational consequences.
Right.
It's a way for the legislative body to kind of hold itself accountable, even if it doesn't go as far as expulsion.
So who was in the hot seat this time?
Well, it was Congressman Al Green, and he was censured for disrupting House proceedings in a rather dramatic protest against potential Medicaid cuts.
Interesting.
Yeah.
A protest that led to a censure. Let's dive into that.
Absolutely. And as we unpack this story, think about this delicate balance between upholding order, right, and allowing dissent within a democratic system. It's a tension that has played out throughout history and continues to shape our political landscape today.
So tell us more about Congressman Green's protest. Like, what exactly did he do, and what were his arguments?
Well, he basically interrupted the normal course of business on the House floor.
Right.
Effectively, bringing things to a halt to voice his concerns about the potential Medicaid cuts. It was a very bold move.
Yeah.
It definitely ruffled some feathers.
I imagine so. What was his rationale for choosing such a disruptive tactic?
Well, in his defense, Congressman Green argued that Medicaid is a lifeline for millions of Americans.
Right.
Providing essential health care coverage
for
those who might otherwise go without. And he felt like a moral obligation to speak out against these proposed cuts, even if it meant breaking with traditional decorum.
He was willing to face the consequences to stand up for what he believed in?
Yeah.
It sounds like he saw this as more than just a policy debate, but rather, a fight for fundamental rights.
Exactly. He connected his protest to broader concerns about social justice.
Right.
And protecting the most vulnerable members of society, particularly those who rely on government programs, like Medicaid, for basic necessities.
Yeah.
And, his actions resonated with many who share those concerns.
To get a sense of the passion behind his stance, there's a powerful quote from his speech on the House floor.
Yeah.
He said, quote, "Medicaid is the only insurance many people have in this country. I would have them have what I have, but I surely would not stand by and see them lose what little they do have."
That statement really captures, I think, the essence of his argument.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful expression, I think, of empathy and a belief in healthcare as this fundamental right.
So how did Congress respond to this act of defiance? Was the censure a foregone conclusion?
Well, it certainly put Congress in a tricky position.
Yeah.
Right. They had to weigh upholding order and decorum within the institution against allowing dissent and protest, which are also cornerstones of a functioning democracy.
Right.
It's a delicate balance. And in this case, they opted to censure him.
Right.
Signaling their disapproval of his methods, even if they didn't necessarily disagree with his underlying concerns about Medicaid cuts.
It makes you wonder, though, does an action like this actually achieve its intended goal? Does it bring more attention to the issue, or does it backfire by alienating those who might otherwise be sympathetic?
Yeah, that's a crucial question, and
Yeah.
there's no easy answer.
Right.
Some argue that disruptive protests can be effective
Right.
in shaking up the status quo and
Mhm.
forcing people to kind of confront uncomfortable truths.
Right.
But, others worry that such tactics alienate potential allies. Right.
And ultimately hinder progress.
Yeah.
Congressman Green's censure definitely sparked a debate
Mm-hmm.
about the role of protest in a democracy
Yeah.
and the limits of acceptable dissent.
It's a debate that likely won't be resolved anytime soon, but it's certainly one worth having. This case also raises questions about the future. Will this discourage other representatives from speaking out on controversial issues, or will it embolden them to take even bolder action?
Only time will tell.
Yeah.
But one thing is for sure, Congressman Green's actions and the subsequent censure have added another layer of complexity
Yeah.
to an already heated debate about healthcare policy and the role of government in providing a safety net for its citizens.
Okay, ready for our final deep dive of the day? This one takes us into the realm of economics
Okay.
and a topic that always seems to spark anxiety: the national debt. Right, it's an issue that looms large in our political discourse. And Congressman David Schweikert devoted a significant portion of his speech to addressing the, alarming state of the nation's finances.
I've heard whispers about his speech. Did he offer any solutions, or was it just doom and gloom?
Well, he certainly didn't sugarcoat the situation. He painted, I think, a pretty stark picture of current spending levels being unsustainable,
Right.
arguing that we're on a path toward a massive increase in the national debt. But what's fascinating here, I think, is how he framed the issue, appealing not just to logic, but also to the listener's emotions.
Yeah, it's one thing to throw out statistics,
Right.
but quite another to make people truly feel the weight of the problem. How did he manage to do that?
Well, he employed a very, personal approach,
Yeah.
connecting the issue of national debt to people's everyday lives and their hopes for the future. For example, he dropped a statistic that's pretty hard to ignore.
Okay.
He estimated that the publicly held debt could double
Wow.
in the next 10 years.
That's a sobering thought.
Yeah.
I imagine that got people's attention.
Yeah.
It's not just an abstract number anymore.
Right.
It's a potential threat to their own financial security.
Exactly. Numbers can be powerful tools,
Yeah.
but they often lack an emotional punch.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So by linking this staggering figure to the potential impact on people's retirement savings, Social Security benefits, and the overall economic well-being of future generations, Congressman Schweikert successfully personalized the issue.
So he presented the problem in stark terms. But did he offer any potential solutions?
Well, he acknowledged the political challenges of traditional solutions like raising taxes
Right.
or cutting specific programs, admitting that those options are often unpopular and might not be sufficient to address the scale of the problem.
Yeah.
But he didn't just dwell on the difficulties. He put forward a solution that he believes holds promise:
Okay.
modernizing government services through technology
Right.
to increase efficiency and reduce costs.
That's an intriguing idea. It sounds like he's advocating for a more innovative approach rather than just resorting to the usual austerity measures. Did he provide any specific examples of how this could work?
Absolutely. He pointed out that reducing duplicative medical scans in Medicare could save billions of dollars. He also highlighted the potential of addressing obesity, a major driver of healthcare costs, through technology and lifestyle changes.
Right.
These are just a couple of examples, but they illustrate his belief that we can leverage technological advancements to streamline government operations and reduce unnecessary spending.
It's a forward-looking approach that might appeal to those who are skeptical of traditional government solutions. It suggests that we can find creative ways to address complex problems without necessarily resorting to, painful cuts or tax hikes.
Right. It's a message that resonates with those who believe in the power of innovation and the need for government to adapt to the changing times.
Yeah.
But it's also a message that raises its own set of challenges. Implementing these technological solutions will require significant investment
Right?
and careful planning to ensure that they are effective and equitable.
And there's always the risk that technology, while promising, might not be the silver bullet we hope for.
Right.
It's important to approach these solutions with a healthy dose of skepticism
Yes.
and a willingness to adapt
Yeah.
if things don't go as planned.
You're absolutely right. It's crucial to have realistic expectations.
Yeah.
And to recognize that there's no one-size-fits-all solution
Right.
to a problem as complex as the national debt. But Congressman Schweikert's speech does offer, I think, a glimmer of hope.
Okay.
suggesting that there might be alternative paths forward that can address the issue without resorting to drastic measures.
It's a conversation starter for
Yeah.
sure. It forces us to think beyond, the usual talking points and consider new possibilities.
Right.
But beyond the policy proposals, there was a particular moment in Congressman Schweikert's speech that really struck me.
I'm curious, what part stood out to you?
It was his closing statement,
Okay.
where he made a direct appeal to the audience, asking, you have kids. How many of you have grandkids? How many of you would like your retirement? How many of you are prepared for a 20% cut in your Social Security in 8 years?
Mm-hmm.
It felt like a genuine moment of vulnerability, a plea for understanding and action.
You're right. It was a powerful moment. He went beyond the policy arguments
Yeah.
and appealed directly to the listener's personal values
Right.
and anxieties,
Yeah.
connecting the issue of the national debt to their own lives and the future of their loved ones.
And then he finished with a simple but impactful statement. He said, help us. This republic is worth saving. It was a call to action, framing the issue as a patriotic duty and suggesting that the very future of the nation is at stake.
Right. It was a masterful use of rhetoric, I think, evoking a sense of shared responsibility and urging listeners to become active participants in shaping the future. It's a reminder that we're all in this together, and the choices we make today will have profound consequences for generations to come.
So we've covered a lot of ground today, from energy policy to healthcare to the national debt. It's been a whirlwind tour through the halls of Congress,
It has.
highlighting the diverse voices and perspectives that shape our nation's laws and policies. What are your key takeaways from these deep dives, and what should our listeners be thinking about as they process all this information?
I think one key takeaway is that democracy is messy,
Yeah,
complex,
for sure.
and often unpredictable.
Right.
Right. There are passionate debates, competing interests, and difficult choices to be made.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It's a sign of, I think, a healthy system where different viewpoints are allowed to be heard and debated.
I agree. And it's a reminder that policymaking is a process,
Yes.
not an event.
Yes.
These individual bills, debates, and speeches are just snapshots in time, but they contribute to a larger narrative about the direction of our country and the values that guide our decisions.
Another important point to remember, I think, is that these issues are interconnected,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Energy policy, healthcare, the national debt, these are not isolated problems. They're all intertwined and influence each other in complex ways.
Absolutely. It's like a giant web where tugging on one thread can have ripple effects throughout the entire system.
Yeah.
And as citizens, it's our responsibility to stay informed
Yes,
and engaged in these discussions.
absolutely.
We can just passively consume the news. We need to actively participate in shaping the future we want to see.
That's a powerful message to leave our listeners with.
Yeah,
The future of our democracy depends on an informed and engaged citizenry.
absolutely.
We can't afford to be complacent
Right.
or disengaged. So I encourage everyone to take what you've learned today and dig deeper into the issues that matter most to you.
Explore the Congressional Record.
Yes.
Connect with your elected officials.
Yeah.
Attend town hall meetings. And consider how you can contribute to shaping the policies that affect your life.
Your voice matters.
Absolutely.
And your participation is essential for a thriving democracy.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information in the Congressional Record.
It is.
But I think you've done a fantastic job of distilling these complex issues
Yeah.
into digestible insights.
Thanks.
It's been quite a journey.
It's certainly a dense forest of information, but it's also, a treasure trove of insights into the workings of our government. And remember, you don't have to tackle the entire forest at once, right? You
Right.
can focus on the issues that matter most to you, the ones that directly impact your life and your community.
That's such a good point. It's about finding those entry points,
Yeah.
those issues that spark your curiosity or, ignite your passion.
Hmm.
And the Congressional Record can be a valuable resource for that exploration.
It absolutely can. It provides a window into the heart of our government, allowing you to track how your elected officials are voting, what arguments they're making, and how they're shaping policy.
And it's all publicly available online.
Right.
Anyone can access it, which is pretty amazing when you think about it.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we, the people, have the right to know what's happening in our government and to hold our representatives accountable.
Transparency is essential for a functioning democracy, and the Congressional Record, despite its density, can actually be a powerful tool for fostering that transparency.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Congress, I'm curious, what would you say to those listeners who might be feeling a bit overwhelmed
Yeah.
or even discouraged by the complexity of it all?
Yeah.
What advice would you give them?
I'd say don't despair.
Yeah.
It's natural to feel overwhelmed at times.
Right.
But remember, democracy is not a spectator sport.
Right.
It requires active participation and engagement from all of us. And that participation can take many forms.
Exactly. It's not just about voting every few years.
Right.
It's about staying informed, engaging in thoughtful discussions, contacting your representatives, attending town hall meetings, and maybe even considering running for office yourself.
There are countless ways to get involved. And it starts with recognizing that your voice matters. You have the power to influence the decisions that shape your community and your country.
Knowing what you know now, how will you engage with the political process to shape the future?
Yeah.
Will you contact your representatives, attend town hall meetings,
Yeah.
or maybe even run for office yourself?
There are countless ways to get involved.
Right.
And it all starts with staying informed and engaged.
Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Eh.
Until next time, stay curious,